A lot of new people joining the channel recently. I always wonder about those people, you know. Obviously they come in because, you know, we talk about a trending topic, a new patch happens, videos do better. That's how it works. But I always wonder what happens if, you know, they stick around long enough to see some of the freaky stuff on this channel. You know, one moment we're talking about lore, and then the next we're singing prayers to a fake god or sacrificing goats. I don't know, I always just wonder about those guys in those moments. And for some of you, I mean, look, you made it through your first intro on this channel. See, that wasn't so bad, huh? Goat sacrifices. We've been through far worse. Stay in there, champ. You're doing great. Because now we need to talk about Teyvat's Descenders, and I'm going to be blunt. It seems like a lot of people were shocked at the revelation that Nibelung, the Dragon King of Teyvat, leader of the Sovereigns, is more likely than not a Descender. Now, to them, this idea is blasphemous because they always assume the key requirements to becoming a Descender is to quite literally descend unto this world, whereas Nibelung is from Teyvat, and in the recent artifact set, we learned he was born when the world was born. Quote, "It came from an unremarkable little world at the edge of the spiral arm, and from the primeval dragon that had been born alongside that world. Yet Waxaklahun Ubah Kan all but confirms Nibelung is a Descender when he told us Nibelung descended from beyond the circles of the world." So, what's going on here? I'm not going to go into great detail as to why Nibelung specifically is a Descender. I'd rather you just watch this video that provides every piece of evidence in the game for why I believe Nibelung was not just a Descender, but the second Descender. Ooh, the latter point of that claim is certainly a take following 5.5, but I'm steadfast in my belief. So feel free to watch that and come back if you are confused. What I'm going to talk about now is what a Descender really is, and it's more than just someone who arrives to this planet from beyond. There are beings and creatures who've done that, yet they aren't Descenders. Our twin, the all-devouring narwhal. The most important part of being a Descender is having a will to rival the world. As Renee point-blank tells us, quote, "This too is my goal, for not all that comes from beyond may be as one that descends. That title belongs only to wills that can rival an entire world. That is what I seek, the way to become just such a will, one that can protect the world, sustain the world, destroy the world, and create the world." The entire point of the Narcissan Croy quest was stopping Renee from becoming a Descender by stopping him from accumulating that will when he was trying to absorb the primordial sea or some shit. Look, anyway, the whole point is, nowhere does having a will to rival the world necessitate one be an alien to Teyvat. So it then stands to reason that should those within Teyvat accumulate that willpower, one strong enough to rival the world's, then they too would be considered as one that descends. In Teyvat's history, there have been 4 Descenders, and we definitively know 2 of them. The first are the Heavenly Principles. They are the will to create the world. And although for some reason this has been called into question lately, because the Traveler from Afar was technically on Teyvat before the Heavenly Principles, let me remind you, these are Nahida's words.
That's right. My current hypothesis is that the first Descender was likely what we now call the Heavenly Principles.
And for those screaming, unreliable narrator, yeah, you know, that could be true. You know, she is bound by Irminsul, but, you know, let me remind you, so is everything else. And if the God of Wisdom is wrong, then everything's wrong. This is all we have to go on, so we roll. Teyvat's 4th Descender is the Traveler, and they are the will to protect the world. Now, this one's the most obvious, I think we can all agree, you know, open and shut case Johnson. But as for the 2nd and 3rd Descender, this is where things get tricky, and from what I've seen, a lot of people have a lot of different opinions. Before I state mine, I need to point out my own biases. For well over a year now, I've long believed Nibelung to be the 2nd Descender, the will to destroy the world. And now, in the wake of new information, I still believe believe it.
You
stuck in his ways! Yeah, maybe. You know, these could all be valid criticisms. Stubborn old man I am, evidently, but I guess I should answer why I believe such. Aside from everything brought up in the earlier linked video, which, mostly still stands, there are a couple of different reasons, but it primarily boils down to the fact that, in my eyes, Nibelung simply can't be the third descender for two big reasons: the Gnoses and the Abyss. Now, we all know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Gnoses are made from the remains of the third descender.
You should have the remains of the third descender on your person, yes?
The remains of the third descender? So that's what the Gnoses actually are. Paimon just thought they looked like chess pieces. How could they be a person's remains?
All the same, assuming that there was no misunderstanding or special metaphor at play, that is what she meant to say.
We also know within that conversation they mentioned the remains hinting at the being's death. We know Nibelung is dead, the Dendro sovereign Apep said it.
But I didn't give up on searching for a way to turn the tides, even after the death of the Dragon King.
And Waxaklahun Ubah Kan confirmed it was the sovereign of sovereigns who put the beast down, but at a great price. $2.99 to be exact. Quotes, the reaver annihilated the black-winged lord at great cost. Well, yeah, that's pretty much the whole quote. And now this confirms that within Neuvillette's vision story, the Great War of Vengeance being brought up is Nibelung's. Quote, severely wounded in the Great War of Vengeance, the usurper had their functions ruined and can no longer use their absolute authority to suppress the original order of this world. Now this should all finally confirm that Nibelung is the second who came, but the question now becomes, is the second who came the second descender? We need to closer look at the Gnoses, which again are the remains of the third descender. These are said to be objects of misfortune, but this is key. Look closely at this entire scene, to the reasoning Skirk provides as to why they are what they are.
Regardless, you should probably get rid of objects of misfortune to prevent any disasters from befalling you. To live in itself is a blessing. But once a person dies, the bonds he once had with this world shall all turn to curses.
Now, despite stating she's no idea who the third descender is, Skirk states the reason the Gnoses are objects of misfortune are because once that person dies, all the bonds he had turned into curses. Now, this is very interesting within the context of the traveler from afar possessing the body of a boy, having a bond with the ancestor of the Seelies, and that bond being broken. Quote, at a far-flung moment in the distant past, the ancestor of the Seelie met a traveler from afar with whom they swore an oath of union witnessed by the three sisters of the Lunar Palace. Just 30 days later, a sudden disaster struck. The Seelie and their lover fled into exile as the world collapsed around them, fleeing until the terrible calamity caught up with and seized them. Their cruel punishment was to be separated from each other for eternity and to have their memories wiped without a trace. And now, to be fair, Skirk's voice line speaks of death being what breaks a bond, whereas between the traveler from afar and the Seelie, I mean, they just got cursed, right? Separated, memories wiped. But, let's not forget, Skirk herself would be the one later to track the movements of this traveler from afar. Quote, following her master's guidance, the girl ventured northward, traversing the freezing wastelands in the corridor of fractured mirrors at the edge of the frozen sea. Alone, she walked through the ruins of the spiral abyss, intent on finding the trail of the voyager that the magical swordmaster had spoken of. Now, one more thing I would like to bring up regarding the Gnoses is that they are exceedingly elementally compatible, just like the Traveler.
That means that the Gnoses, which are exceedingly element compatible and can even enhance elemental abilities, do indeed come from the third descender. I wonder, does your body also possess similar properties?
Like being able to use elemental powers without a vision. That does sort of count as special compatibility, right?
We know the Traveler is exceedingly elementally compatible because they don't come from this world.
Whoa! Did you just feel the elements of the world? Seems all you had to do was just touch the statue and you got the power of Animo. As much as they may want it, people in this world can never get a hold of powers as easily as you. Uh-huh. It's because you're not from this world to begin with.
Of the 4 Descenders, only one originally came from Teyvat, so Nibelung's body should in fact be the least likely candidate, as that's which serves at the Gnosis. In addition, let's not forget, Nibelung was completely swamped by the Abyss when he came back. He wasn't some light-bearing dragon king, he was the black-winged lord whom the Abyss had swallowed, quote. But in the end, there is always a limit to power. When the Abyss swallowed the dark-winged lord and the celestial nail reshaped the world and the laws that governed it. This kind of crack-riddled body is not going to be used for anything. Let me ask you guys this. If you had to sit here and choose to you're getting an organ transplant, someone who died of crack, or someone who is a perfectly healthy individual, which one are you gonna sit here and choose? A traveler not from Teyvat who also should have been elementally compatible? Now that's a good bet for someone whose body would be used as the basis for the Gnosis. Now I know some are sitting here and no doubt stating the traveler from afar was here before Nibelung returned, so surely they are the second Nigga, is that a bird? What the fuck is that? But my friends, the question has nothing to do with timing of arrival. It has everything to do with timing of the will acquired. When the traveler from afar possessed the body of the boy, did the traveler from afar have a will strong enough to rival the world yet? Strong enough to have been considered that as one who descends. Because let's not forget, Nibelung was on Teyvat for a long time before he acquired the will by gathering the forbidden knowledge from across the, wherever the people get crack from. And the truth is, now the police, fucking lovely, hey, we're all doing everything today, are we? And the truth is, with regards to the traveler from afar, we simply don't know. However, I'm gonna bet no, and let me tell you why. 1, I'm biased. 2, after swearing an oath of union with the ancestor of the Seelie race, all that horse shit, let me be your sword, your shield, your guide, your unpardonable conspirator in rebellion, 30 days after all of this, they had still done nothing! Nibelung then returned, brought hell with him, and what did the traveler from afar do? Fled into exile! Now to be fair, the traveler is a descender, and Lord knows that nigga's been getting his ass whooped all over Teyvat, but regardless, I still have the traveler from afar as the 3rd descender, the will to sustain the worlds. Now, this will is an interesting one. For someone who is so vehemently opposed to the heavenly principles and the way of life on Teyvat, why would they sustain the world? Well, it could be they didn't have a choice, Celestia just tore their body to shreds and used it to create the Gnosis, either the body of the boy they possessed or of the actual traveler, but Neuvillette's story on Visions states the heavenly principles worked with someone else to create the Gnosis. Quote, severely wounded in the Great War of Vengeance, the usurper had their functions ruined and could no longer use their absolute authority to suppress the original order of this world. To continue to subdue and control the resentment and loathing of the world, the usurper and one who came after created the Gnosis together. Now, the original Chinese simply states the usurper worked with another latecomer, but given Nibelung was consumed by the Abyss and hell-bent on tearing the world to shreds, and dead, it couldn't have been him, so either this text is referring to the 3rd descender, who could be the traveler from afar, who simply might have seen the world falling apart after the war, and despite not liking it, it still had the people he loved on it, like the ancestor of the Seelie race, so offered his own body to save it for love. Or the text is just not referring to a descender at all, but rather simply someone who came from another world to Teyvat, of which, let's not forget, friends, there are plenty of people. And now, am I being stubborn about this whole thing? I mean, probably, right? I mean, we have one confirmed descender who's dead, and we have the Gnosis, which are made from the remains of a descender, so, Occam's razor would suggest that Nibelung is the 3rd descender, but, I'm delusional. And I mean, not for nothing, but, if you look at Renee's notes and you consider Nibelung to be the 2nd descender, then they count down perfectly. Traveler, protect the world. Traveler from afar, sustain the world. Nibelung, destroy the world. And heavenly principles, create the world. I'm clicking on to anything.